Magid Fasts for Ramadan by Mary Matthews, illustrated by E.B. Lewis. Magid woke while it was still dark. He could hear the roosters crowing and the high wavering voice of the mueddin calling people to prayer. Allah is most great! Allah is most great! Come to prayer, chanted the mueddin from the top of the minaret. It would soon be morning. The ceiling above Majid's head creaked. Gidu was getting his prayer rug. Majid pulled the sheet over his ears. But now he could hear his parents talking in the kitchen. Mama and Baba had gotten up to pray too, or had little Ibrahim wakened them? Then Majid remembered. Today was the first day of Ramadan, the month when good Muslims eat nothing and drink nothing all day, every day, from sunrise to sunset. Mama and Baba had gotten up to eat the last meal before daybreak. Majid wished he could fast too, but Mama and Baba said he wasn't old enough. Majid sat up in bed. I am old enough, he thought. I'm almost 8. Last night, sitting with his grandfather on the veranda swing, watching the new moon, Majid had begged him, Gidu, tell me the story of why we fast in Ramadan. It was in the month of Ramadan, Gidu began, on the night of power, that the Quran was first revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. What happened, Gidu? Majid nestled closer. The Prophet was praying in a lonely cave, high in the Arabian mountains, when the angel Gabriel appeared to him. And what did Gabriel say? Asked Majid, although he knew the story by heart. Read, read, said the angel, but Muhammad did not know how to read. He was frightened. Gidu pretended to tremble. Gabriel took hold of the Prophet and pressed him in his arms. He squeezed him 3 times, and again he said, Read. Gidu squeezed Majid 3 times, but not very hard. When the angel left, Gidu said, the Prophet was shaking with fear. Gidu pushed the swing to and fro with his foot. His eyes were looking far away. I can read, Majid said quietly. It was strange that the Prophet couldn't read, not even when he was a grown man, not even though he was the messenger of God. Gidu was silent. After a while, Majid asked, But why do we fast, Gidu? The Quran tells us to fast, Gidu answered. Fasting teaches self-control, and it reminds us that everyone is equal before Allah, because we all feel hunger and need food. I want to fast this year, Majid said, but Mama and Baba won't let me. Gidu smiled. You will fast when you are older, he said. You will be a truly obedient Muslim and fast with all your heart. By then, Ramadan will fall in the winter, when the days are cooler and fasting is easier for all of us. Last night, Majid had fallen asleep wondering at the strange way Ramadan slipped backwards through the seasons. Now, sitting in bed, hugging his knees to his chest, he pictured his grandfather's face, all folds and furrows like the sand in the desert. I want to be a truly obedient Muslim like Gidu, Majid thought, and he whispered into the darkness, so that only Allah could hear him. I am going to fast for Ramadan. Then he got out of bed. As he pulled on his shorts, Majid heard his sister, Aisha, opening and closing drawers in her room. Surely Aisha wasn't getting dressed for school already. Now she was 12. She rode the bus to a girls' school in town, but she didn't leave this early. Majid opened his bedroom door. There was a light on in the kitchen. He went in, rubbing his eyes. What are you doing out of bed? Mama exclaimed. She was rinsing glasses in the sink. The mueddin woke me, Majid said. Have you eaten the last meal already? Mama nodded, her forehead pinched into a frown. More banging and scraping were coming from Aisha's room. Why is Aisha up so early? Majid asked. She got up for the suhoor meal. She's fasting this year, Mama said. Had you forgotten? Majid's face fell. He had forgotten. And Aisha didn't even want to fast. But Baba had said she must. Now she was going to the big Muslim school in the city. I don't want my daughter to be the only Muslim in the school not fasting, Baba had said. Majid didn't want to be the only member of his family not fasting. He went to his mother and wrapped his arms around her. Mama, he pleaded, can't I miss breakfast even? Mama hesitated, clicking her tongue. Oh, I suppose so, she said at last. For today, but you must go back to bed for at least 2 more hours. I will, Mama, Majid said. Aisha came into the kitchen carrying her school satchel. Loose ends of her hair stuck out of her braid all the way down her back. She glowered at Majid. What are you doing up? She asked. Fasting, Majid said. You can't. You're too little. Mama said I could miss breakfast, Majid said. Pooh, Aisha said. That's nothing. She sat down at the table and rested her head on her satchel. Mama put her arm around Aisha's shoulders. Aisha, dear, she said, school doesn't start any earlier just because it's Ramadan. Go and rest on your bed a little longer. Aisha left, trailing her satchel. Majid was leaving too when Baba came in. Sabah khair, Baba greeted them all cheerfully. He propped his medical journal against the empty coffee pot and sat down to read it. Sabah noor, Majid called from the hallway, smiling to himself. Even Baba must be a bit rattled this first morning of Ramadan. He had buttoned his shirt buttons into the wrong buttonholes. When Majid got up for the second time that day, Aisha had left for school. Baba had gone to the clinic. Only Mama and baby Ibrahim were home. It seemed strange to go to school without having breakfast first. As he was walking to school, Majid met a friend from his class, Gamal. Gamal was eating dried dates. Aren't you fasting for Ramadan? Majid asked him. Of course not, Gamal said. Kids don't have to. I haven't eaten anything since last night, Majid said proudly. My sister is fasting too. Gamal shrugged his shoulders. Our family doesn't fast much, he said, and ate another date. Majid was shocked. Then he remembered that Gamal's family didn't always go to Friday prayers at the mosque. Perhaps they weren't truly obedient, but he was going to be truly obedient, like Gidu. All morning, instead of paying attention to his lessons, Majid thought about how to skip lunch. It was no use asking Mama for permission to miss lunch, as well as breakfast, because she would say, little boys need to eat and grow strong. No, he had to find another way to fast. By the time Majid returned home in the middle of the day, it was very hot. Normally, he would have gone straight to the kitchen for a glass of water, but you weren't supposed to drink if you were fasting. He went to find Mama. She had just finished feeding Ibrahim and was trying to get him to go to sleep. There were beads of sweat on her face. Let me look after Ibrahim, Mama, Majid said. He picked up his little brother, who was almost too heavy for him to carry. I'll take him into the yard and show him the hens. If he stayed outside for a while, perhaps Mama would forget to give him lunch. The hens were sitting in the dust under the olive tree. Majid stood in the shade too, jiggling Ibrahim up and down. Then he caught sight of some geese in the irrigation ditch, floating on the muddy yellow water where the great olive leaves brushed its surface. Look, Ibrahim, Majid said, geese. Ibrahim laughed and stretched out his fat little hands towards the big orange-billed birds. Majid's arms were starting to ache. He couldn't hold his brother much longer. He carried Ibrahim indoors again, but seeing the geese had given him an idea. Mama had already put his lunch out on the kitchen table, bread and halwa, and a glass of lemonade. Is it all right if I take my lunch outdoors? Magid asked. Of course, Mama said. Just be quiet when you come back in. Try not to wake the baby. Magid carried the plate and glass to the bottom of the yard. As he went, he kept looking over his shoulder. He knew Mama was putting Ibrahim to sleep in the bedroom, but he felt as if her eyes were following him. At the bottom of the yard, Magid sat down on the old bench under the olive tree. He held his lunch on his lap and looked at it. He was very thirsty, thirstier than he can remember ever being, and hungry too. He didn't really have to fast for Ramadan. In fact, everyone expected him not to. Then Majid remembered what he had whispered to Allah in the early morning darkness. He had promised Allah he would fast. Majid looked around one last time. He was alone. There was no one to see. Quickly, he tore up a sandwich, carried the plate over to the irrigation ditch, and swept the pieces off into the muddy water. The geese gobbled them up in an instant. It was harder not to drink any of the lemonade, but Majid closed his eyes tight and poured it all out onto the ground. Then he walked slowly back to the house. Majid left the plate and glass on the veranda and went to his room. He didn't want to talk to Mama just now. He was proud to be fasting for Ramadan, but in his heart he knew that she and Baba would be very upset if they found out. By the end of the afternoon, Majid's throat was parched, and his skin, from the back of his neck to the soles of his feet, felt burning hot. When he heard the tap running in the bathroom, he wanted to rush in, fill the largest glass he could find, and drink it all up at once. But he remembered his promise to Allah. He ran his tongue over his dry lips. He didn't want to play with his cars any longer. Bending over them on the floor made him feel dizzy. He sat on the edge of his bed and rested his head in his hands. He felt weak, as if he had a fever. Did he have a fever? Then he wondered if Aisha felt the same way. When Aisha came home and Majid heard her go into her room, letting the door bang, he crept down the hall and knocked timidly. "Go away!" Aisha shouted. Majid hesitated. Then he opened the door a crack. "Can I come in for a minute?" he asked. Aisha didn't answer. Majid went in. Aisha lay stretched out on her bed. Her satchel and sandals lay where she dropped them. "Have you had a hard day?" Majid asked. "Terrible," Aisha said with a groan. "Do you know some of the girls weren't even fasting? We had to watch them eat lunch. It was horrible." "How do you feel now?" Majid asked. "Do you have a headache?" "Yes, I do," Aisha said, pulling the pillow over her face. "A splitting headache. Please go away, Majid. You're lucky you're not fasting." Majid grimaced. He tiptoed out of the room and closed the door quietly behind him. Baba, home already from the clinic, passed him in the hallway. "I'm going to lie down for a while," Baba said, mopping his neck with a handkerchief. "Try to be quiet." He went into the bedroom, leaving the door open to catch the air from the hall fan. Majid could hear Mama in the kitchen. He could smell onions cooking. His belly rumbled, but he didn't dare go into the kitchen. He couldn't bear to see the food, and he didn't want Mama asking awkward questions. He'd better do the same as Baba. Leaving his own door ajar, he lay down on his bed. The hall fan clicked and whirled. Slowly, the daylight faded. Majid must have dozed. He was wakened by the creaking of the stairs that led to Gidu's apartment. He jumped up and ran to open the door. Gidu came in wearing a clean white robe and a little crocheted cap. "Gidu!" Majid cried. "Are the Ramadan lanterns lit?" From Guido's apartment, it was possible to see the top of the minaret. To let people know when the day's fast was ended, the muezzin would light lanterns there, although Baba preferred to listen for the announcement on the radio. "Do you want to come up and watch for the Ramadan lanterns with me?" Guido asked. Magid slid his hand into Guido's, and together they climbed the steep stairs to Guido's apartment. Without putting on the light, Guido sat down in a chair by the window, and Magid clambered onto his lap. It was getting quite dark. The sun had left a dusty purple haze in the sky. Then Magid saw a small light flickering and wink up near the top of the minaret. "Look, Guido, look!" he whispered. The muezzin was beginning to light his lamps. "Let's go down and tell the others," Magid said, tugging Guido to his feet. As they washed their hands, face, and feet in the bathroom in preparation for the prayers, Magid heard the muezzin's high, wavering cry, just as he had heard it before daybreak. "God is most great! God is most great! Come to prayer! Come to prayer!" Soon Baba and Aisha came into the living room, and then Mama untying her apron. Standing on the prayer rug next to Guido's, Magid tried to follow everything his grandfather did and said. He knew most of the verses from the Quran he was supposed to recite, but he sometimes forgot when to stand and when to kneel, which shoulder to look over first, and how long to keep his forehead on the rug. After they had finished the prayers, Baba rubbed his hands together. "Now let's eat," he called in a hearty voice. "The dates first," Mama said, and they each took a date from the bowl Mama held out to them, breaking their fast the way the Prophet had broken his. Then Aisha brought glasses of cold water from the kitchen. Magid drank his all at once. It was strange to eat and drink again. Mama always prepared especially good dishes for the iftar meal during Ramadan. Tonight she had made lamb stew and milk pudding sweetened with honey. Magid held out his plate. He was blissfully content. "Look what came in the mail today," Baba said after they had been eating for a while. He drew a thin blue air letter from his pocket. "Is it from Uncle Samir in Detroit?" Aisha asked. Baba nodded. "Samir wants to wish us a blessed Ramadan. They are fasting too." "Even Haydar?" Magid asked. Cousin Haydar was only a year older than he was. "No, not Haydar. He's too young. Besides, it's very difficult to fast when you live in a non-Muslim country, though Samir says that there are more Muslim children in Haydar's school now than there used to be." "My friend Esmad lived in America when she was little," Aisha said. "She had to go to school on Fridays. They have Saturday and Sunday off," Mama said, "so they can go to church and synagogue. You have Friday off, so you can go to community prayers at the mosque." Majid had stopped eating. Friday, the day after tomorrow. He and Aisha would both be home from school. How could he keep his secret from her? Then he saw Aisha staring at him. He quickly took a third helping of lamb stew. "Why are you so hungry, Majid?" Aisha said in a loud voice. "Anyone would think you'd been fasting too." Majid held his breath, but Baba was calmly folding up the air letter, and Mama had gone to get the milk pudding. Majid looked across the table at Guido. Guido smiled serenely. All the same, Majid felt uneasy. Could Aisha possibly know? On the second day of Ramadan, Mama allowed Majid to miss breakfast again, although she refused to wake him up for the suhoor meal. "You must get a proper night's sleep," she said. Majid managed to wake anyway on Thursday, but on Friday he slept right through suhoor. When he went into the kitchen, he found Mama and Aisha cleaning Ramadan lanterns and putting new candles inside them. "Can we go and sing for the neighbors tonight?" Majid asked, forgetting for a moment how much he wanted a glass of juice. "For a little while," Mama said. "Do you remember the Ramadan song?" "I remember the chorus," Majid said, "but I don't remember the rest." Mama laughed. Aisha began to hum the tune. "Do you think Miss Diab will give us nuts again?" Majid asked. "Maybe," Mama said. "But you can't eat them until after iftar," Aisha said. "I know," Majid said. "I'm not stupid." He picked up a cloth and began to polish. Soon the little lanterns made of bright tin and colored glass shone and glowed. "The lanterns are the best part of Ramadan," Majid said. "What I like best is getting new clothes at the end," Aisha said. "Are we going to Aunt Zainab's for Eid al-Fitr this year, Mama?" "Only if you behave like good children all the way through Ramadan." Mama waved her finger at them. Majid was pleased. He liked to go to Cairo to see Aunt Zainab and Uncle Rashid and his cousins Omar and Magda. If they were lucky, Uncle Rashid would take them to one of the street fairs. And for the feast, they would eat roast chicken and stuffed grape leaves, baklava and sugar cakes. He would drink glass after glass of tamarind. The thought of all the good things Eid al-Fitr would bring made Majid's empty belly ache. What a long time it was till the end of Ramadan. What a lot of fasting he still had to do. He was beginning to feel weak again already. Then Majid remembered the stories Gidu had told him about the Prophet. How, when he was still a little boy, Muhammad had worked as a shepherd in the Arabian wilderness, where it wasn't always possible to find food and water when you needed them. Even the Prophet knew what it was like to be weak and hungry and thirsty. Hunger made everyone equal, that's what Gidu had said. The Prophet understands, Majid thought, and so will Gidu when I tell him at the end of Ramadan. He will be proud of me then. The thought made Majid feel stronger, but today was going to be especially difficult because Aisha was home, and he would have to make sure she didn't find out what he did with his lunch. After noonday prayers, Baba went to visit an old patient who lived nearby, and Mama told Aisha to do her homework. Then she made Majid's lunch. Majid took it outside, but as he passed the veranda, Aisha came out, carrying her satchel. Majid's heart sank. From the veranda, Aisha could see all the way to the bottom of the yard. "If I were you," Majid called to her, "I wouldn't try to read out here in the sun. You'll get a headache." To his relief, Aisha went indoors. Majid hurried to the bottom of the yard. Then he heard the veranda door open again. He hid behind the olive tree and peeked out. Aisha had brought a sunshade out with her. She was sitting on the veranda swing with the sunshade open over her head. Her face was in shadow. He couldn't tell whether she was looking at him or not. Majid pressed his back against the tree. The geese paddled about in the yellow-brown water at his feet. He held his breath. All was quiet save for the snorting of the geese as they waited to be fed. Majid looked over his shoulder. Surely the olive branches hid him from the house. Quickly he tore up his sandwich and scraped the pieces into the water. "What are you doing?" Aisha's voice shrilled in Majid's ear. He dropped the plate. It floated down through the water and settled into the yellow mud at the bottom. "Now look what you made me do," Majid wailed, "sneaking up on me like that." "I made you? What were you doing?" "That's what Mama will want to know. You haven't been giving your food to the geese every day, have you? Is that why you've been so hungry at iftar? What are you up to, Majid?" "I'm fasting," Majid said, choking back a sob. "That's ridiculous," Aisha said. "A little kid like you. And you've lost one of Mama's plates. I'm going to tell." Aisha flounced back into the house, clattering the shutters behind her. Majid poured out the lemonade and carried the empty glass indoors. Mama met him in the kitchen. Aisha, standing behind her, gave him a smug look as he came in. "What's this Aisha tells me?" Mama's voice was stern. A deep frown lined her forehead. "Giving your lunch to the geese. You've been going all day without food?" Majid hung his head. "I'm fasting," he whispered. "Oh, Majid." That isn't the way to fast. That's very disobedient. I should never have said you could miss breakfast. We need to talk about this when Baba gets home. And I want Gitu to be there too. Go to your room now. You too, Aisha. Even if your brother misbehaves, that's no excuse to be unkind to him. I'm disappointed in both of you. Mama pursed her lips and shook her head. Slowly, Majid followed Aisha out of the kitchen. Her shoulders were drooping and she didn't look at him as they went down the hall. As Majid waited with a heavy heart for Baba to come home, he thought about Ramadan and about Gidu. He'd always pictured Gidu's look of pride when he found out that Majid had fasted like everyone else. But when Gidu learned that Majid had deceived Mama and Baba, Gidu wouldn't be proud of him at all. Why hadn't he thought of that? It wasn't even clear he could go on fasting for a whole month anyway. It was too much for him. He should have been satisfied with missing breakfast. Majid gave a deep sigh. It was more difficult than he had imagined to be a truly obedient Muslim. There was a knock at his bedroom door. Then the door opened part way, and Aisha stuck her head inside. "You are to come to the living room," she said. "Baba and Gidu are there," Mama told them. Aisha looked over her shoulder, then she stepped inside Majid's room and closed the door behind her. "Listen, Majid," she said. "I'm sorry I told on you. I think it's impressive, really, the way you went without food like that when you didn't have to. But they were bound to find out sooner or later." Majid shrugged. He didn't feel like talking to Aisha right now. "I'm in trouble too, you know," Aisha said, opening the door again. Dejectedly, Majid followed her down the hall to the living room. Mama, Baba, and Gidu were waiting there. "Majid," Baba said, "you've behaved very deceitfully. That isn't the way to celebrate Ramadan, is it?" Majid hung his head. "No, Baba," he said in a small voice, "but I wanted so much to fast." His lips started to tremble. "I told Allah I would, and everyone else was fasting, even Aisha." Silently, Majid began to cry. Then Gidu stood up and drew Majid close to his side. "Allah is generous," Gidu said. "Majid will be a truly obedient Muslim." Majid rubbed his sleeve across his eyes and stared up at his grandfather. How could Gidu say that now? "Truly," Gidu said, "you have fasted with all your heart, Majid, and you didn't give up when you discovered how hard it was. But it is important for a Muslim to be honest, and you weren't being honest, were you?" Majid looked down again and shook his head. There was nothing he could say. After a long silence, Gidu said, "Do you still want to fast, Majid?" Majid's heart skipped a beat, and he heard Mama gasp. Did he want to fast? What would happen if he said yes? Then Majid thought of getting up tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, and going to school and not eating day after day until the end of Ramadan. No, it was impossible. Mama and Baba were right. He was still too young. "No," Majid said at last. "Fasting all day is too hard." He raised his eyes to meet Gidu's. "But I think I could go without breakfast." Majid looked at Mama. She was smiling, as if she were pleased with him, even proud. "What does Baba say?" Gidu asked. Before Baba could speak, Aisha cried out, "Oh, Baba, fasting all day is too hard for me too. Can't I fast part of the day this year until I get used to it? Can't I break my fast when I get home from school?" "I think she's right, dear," Mama said. "We've been too hard on her, insisting she fasts like an adult when she's only 12. Baba stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Very well then," he said. "Majid will fast until noon, and Aisha will break her fast before iftar. That is the best arrangement, I believe." Mama nodded. "What do you think, Gidu?" Majid asked anxiously. Still holding Majid close to his side, Gidu reached out his other arm and drew Aisha close to him also. "I'm very proud of you all," he said. Then Mama told Majid and Aisha they must kiss each other and be friends. Majid drew back. "Come on, Majid," Aisha said, holding out her arms. "If it weren't for you, I'd still be fasting all day." Majid grinned. "So would I," he said, "if it weren't for you." He held up his face and he and Aisha kissed each other on both cheeks the way grown-ups do. The end.